originally for this intro, I had this idea to wear some sort of like PPE, like hazmat suit, gas mask, or do some like stalker kind of cosplay. And then I remembered I don't have any of that, so just pretend. Maybe I'll put like a little PNG, like bing.
Legalize nuclear bombs.
So the last couple of days, I've just been kind of interested in the long-term nuclear warning messages that have been created over the years, because I think they're much more interesting than just signs. So I think the best place to start this off is just how nuclear power plants work, because I think a lot of people get this idea that nuclear power plants are like bomb machines. Like you're just blowing up, you're creating, like what Oppenheimer did to make the nuclear bomb is just what they're doing, but instead of blowing up cities, they're generating electricity. And that could just not be farther from the truth. Literally all they are giant steam engines. Basically that is also what coal is. Basically, like coal power plants, right? All you're doing is you're lighting coal or some other flammable fossil fuels on fire, boiling water, and that steam from the water is turning turbines. That is the exact same nuclear power is doing, right? Nuclear power is using, instead of burning carbon, nuclear power plants are using the heat radiation given off by highly radioactive materials to generate heat, to boil water, to turn into steam and turn turbines. So as much as it does kind of look like nuclear power is free energy, when in really it is not, you run out of radiation. Similarly, like magnets, if you keep using magnets as magnets, they will lose their magnetism. And similarly with nuclear power, they're just going to be a diminishing return. That nuclear thorium or plutonium or whatever they're using will get less and less hot basically during the reactions. So it needs to be replaced and it needs to be dumped somewhere. And you just can't dump it anywhere because it's not good. And so what they did, originally the US military was putting nuclear waste in capsules and then dropping them to the bottom of the ocean. Great idea on their part. I'm sure that won't be bad at all. But eventually what we've kind of come to now, what we do is we have these lead-lined caskets. They're just big capsules that we put the nuclear material in, and then we bury them in the ground. But not just the regular ground, but we encase them in concrete, just creating these big concrete blocks that have these metal tubes in them. And as far as we're really aware, they will be radioactive for tens of thousands of years, but they're not going anywhere. They're safe to be around as long as you're not like poking at them. They're big lead caskets. They're keeping out a lot of the radiation. But the issue comes in when we're talking about people who don't know. Nowadays, just you can put up a big nuclear sign, everybody knows that nuclear symbol, and they're like, oh, I better get away. I'm not going anywhere near there, right? So the majority of people will just stay away. Even if they don't have just the sign, some sort of message like, hey, don't come here near here, radioactive. People get really scared when they see the word radioactive, they'll keep away. But what happens when those people don't read? They can't read the sign. They have no relevance for the symbol. That's where the long-term nuclear waste warning messages come in. So after the US military was done just dumping the stuff in the middle of the ocean, in 1993, the Sandia National Laboratories released a report on the first of what I would think of as being the long-term nuclear waste warning messages, which is something you've probably heard before. It's just a simple message that says, this is a message and a part of a system of messages. Pay attention to it. Sending this message was important to us. We consider ourselves to be a powerful culture. This place is not a place of honor. No highly esteemed deed is commemorated here. Nothing valued is here. What is here was dangerous and repulsive to us. This message is a warning about danger. The danger is in a particular location. It increases towards the center. The center of the danger is here, of a particular size and shape, and below us. The danger is still present in your time as it was in ours. The danger is to the body and it can kill. The form of the danger is an emanation of energy. The danger is only unleashed if you substantially disturb this place physically, and this place is best shunned and left uninhabited. Sorry if the lighting is a little bit different. I had my window open earlier, and that was providing some natural light, but now we're just back to dark room. Hope I'm seen okay. What was mere seconds to you has been quite a few hours for me. As I was recording, my dad came home, and I don't really want him intruding in on me making these videos. Not only having to explain to him why I'm making them, but also what long-term nuclear waste warning signs are. So I didn't want some sort of king of the hill, like, that boy ain't right kind of thing. So I was just like, I'm gonna stop filming. And now it's 8 hours later. So I kind of forgot where I was. Oh yes. Okay. I just got done reading the first message, which I love. It is so cool because in one hand it is in English, so it has to assume that the English language is still understood, but it's told in a way that is very simple. Like, if you can read English, these words really shouldn't have changed. Besides, I don't know, emanation may not have stayed. That's a little bit more of a big word, a little bit of a $5 word or whatever they call them. But everything else, I find it really interesting because it's going through the lens of some sort of future civilization where humanity has gone through a sort of dark age and lost the reasons for why we would be afraid of these nuclear sites. But it's told in this way that appeals to a tribalistic nature, with things like, we consider ourselves to be a powerful culture. There's like this interesting appeal to authority. And then this this is not a place of honor. No highly esteemed deed is commemorated here. Nothing valued is here. Which I find very interesting because, as we'll get into a little bit later, these sites look like proposed. Some of these sites are at least proposed to look a little different than just a flat piece of concrete. They intentionally look kind of odd and are clearly man-made. Again, I'm going to get into later my thoughts on that, but a little bit of a foreshadowing. I do think it's interesting trying to think about how a future culture might interact with these things. Then also describing what it is. What I find interesting too is they are describing radiation as well as they can to, these primitive peoples. It's interesting how they describe it as a danger that gets more dangerous the closer you get to it. Mainly the most haunting part I see of all of this is the line, "The danger is still present in your time as it was in ours." It's just like, ooh, it's just some chills. Like, it reminds me of just an eldritch evil. Like, we're describing it the way the unknown authors of the Necronomicon describe the eldritch horrors that lie in the stars, It was, the danger is still present in your time as in ours. It's so crazy. But I want to get into some of the structures, which is really interesting. So I want to get into the structures, which is interesting. I'll throw up an image. It's basically, the way I usually imagined it was just a flat concrete, almost looks like a parking lot with no lines. But what they actually proposed is a sort of Georgia Guidestones like monument that records everything about the site in various languages, and it would just have this information explaining what this is, why you need to keep away from it, why it happened, all that kind of stuff. But my favorite part about it is, even though it's written all in languages, there are pictures for those that are illiterate, because these languages may not exist in the future, or exist in the future in a way that it is still legible to future people, but also provides pictures. And if that isn't enough, if pictures describing it are not good enough, they implemented a type of architecture where if the wind blows through it, it creates this eerie whistling, howling noise that should keep people away. It's the equivalent of it's like a human version of those little bird clicker things that are by grocery stores. This is very similar, but for people, and I love that. So there was many different proposals for how we could create architecture that would want to keep people away. Because, to be honest, that building that I showed earlier, it looks like a museum. Like, it doesn't really look very uninviting. But some other very cool people have come up with ways to deter people. And by far my favorite is the spikes. They just have this forest of what would be like metal or concrete spikes that look like rose thorns scattered everywhere. Like, it just looks hellish. I love it. And that's the way to keep people away. And getting back to the thing that I foreshadowed earlier about this is not a place of honor, the one controversial thing about these big spiky things and stuff like this is the way it can be interpreted is not just that it is scary, but there is something spiritually significant to these places. And that's why the sign is so important, especially if it's legible, because it's not hard to imagine this big, scary, spiky place future cultures could use as some sort of rite of passage. Like, oh, it's really scary. Well, you're going to go on a vision quest there. Like, that's how you become a man. You, like, go out into the spiky thing, and then if you come back, you're, like, good. But in reality, you grew, like, 3 eyes, and, you know, you have 26 testicles, and, you know, you're like a super mutant, basically. I don't know. It's pretty sealed up. I don't think the nuclear waste actually has that issue. But hopefully that would keep people away, the signs, if they can read them. But if not, it might even become a cultural site, which is why it's kind of controversial to, like, put the big spiky things and maybe just hide it. There's also some, like, worry about, I think the last point about all this is there's some worry about the ecological impact of just burying the nuclear waste. And it really seems to be a non-issue from what I've seen. There are natural deposits of uranium in Africa that are just kind of exposed. And I believe researchers are saying that in the tens of thousands of years they've been there, the radiation has only measurably spread and infected like 10 meters away from the site. Like, it's very minimal and not much of an issue, even with water, you know, going in and out. But the nuclear material hasn't moved very far, so even if these were these nuclear waste sites were to be damaged or something like that, it probably wouldn't be that big an issue. But don't take my word for it. I don't think any of you will be involved with that kind of planning. I don't know if any of you guys a couple hundred or a couple months in the future after World War III come across these nuclear waste sites, please don't take my word for it and reference me and be like, actually it's fine if we crack it open like an Easter egg. No, I would just avoid that, you know, liability, Mr. Lawyer here. I like to say that everything that Kyle said was completely false. It was all completely false, and it was only satire and blah 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 lawyer stuff. Yeah, no. So that was my final point about that. I just find it really cool, this message that's supposed to outlive humanity being put on these nuclear sites. Really don't think I have much else to say about them. I haven't heard a lot of other people talk about these, and probably for good reason, because it's kind of boring. Like, there really isn't much to say, to be honest. I don't know. Could these nuclear sites be plundered for nuclear material to make bombs, like, you know, something akin to what Zakhaev was doing in the all gillied up mission in COD 4? I don't know. Will we be seeing one-armed Russian terrorists doing arms deals at nuclear waste sites? I don't know. Again, I don't know. I've been kind of loaded up on Modern Warfare recently, so if I'm making a lot of references to it, that's why. You know, I think that's all I have to say about that. So if you watched it this far, thank you, and I'll see you later, sailors.